what is OLAP versus OLTP, OLAP versus OLTP. So OLAP, the full form for OLAP is Online Analytical Processing. OLAP system have the capability. So online analytical processing. What does this mean? This means that anything that is something where you can perform an analysis, the database on which you will perform the analysis becomes the OLAP database or online analytical processing database. So certain things need to be taken care of, well, like need to be known of rather, not taken care of. Whereas OLTP on the other hand means online transaction processing. OLTP is online transaction processing. So as the name suggests, again, it's like wherever there is something which is transactional, which deals with numbers, calculations, etc., that is called online transaction processing database system. Now, OLTP has the work to administer the day-to-day transactions in an organization. Simple as it can be. Now, OLAP consists of OLAP consists of a type of a software tool that is used for data analytics. Rather, not get into this thing. This is the architecture for OLAP. So you have a business that has different branches in it, different web pages in it. You create a database for every branch and you put it in a data warehouse. If you use this data warehouse for your analysis purpose, it becomes an OLAP database, right? If you use this database for online transaction processing, it becomes an OLTP database. That's the only difference. So when I say transactions, what does that mean? Let's say your banking system, so your ATM machine, your UPI transactions, your transactions on online platforms like Amazon, Myntra, Flipkart, Spotify, Netflix, all these are OLTP based database systems. Why? Because on all these platforms, you have to just hear me and you can make down notes. So these are online transaction processing systems, because everything is happening on daily basis, on day-to-day transactions, a minute-to-minute transaction, which is a real-time transaction. Let's say you go to an ATM, you withdraw some money, and you immediately get a message on your phone saying that so much amount has been debited and this is your final balance in your account. How that thing is happening? It is a real-time transaction processing system that is happening at the back end. The moment you withdraw 500, 2000, 1 lakh from your account, be it online or through an ATM machine, or if you are doing a UPI transaction to a person, immediately you get a message. So this is entirely based on OLTP, Online Transaction Processing System. Now, if you go with Amazon or any other process, see, whenever I buy something from Amazon, so whenever I'm buying something from Amazon, let's say I buy these speakers, so I buy this laptop. So when I'm buying this laptop from Amazon, it asks me when I'll add this to my cart. So the moment I proceed to check out, the inventory gets deducted. Understand? The count of this system, the count of products that this system, this laptop count, will decrease by 1 at the back end. That is also happening in real time. So that is also a real time processing system. Anything that is happening when you make a payment for this product, your account gets debited and the inventory over here also gets reduced by 1, and your cart or your account gets updated with your orders, the orders that you have placed, right? So all this is happening in real time. This becomes an online transaction processing system. Now, every OLTP system is generally a user interface based system. There is a platform, there is an application, there is a website on which you would be accessing things, on which you would be performing certain tasks. Whenever you make a UPI transaction, you have a online processing system. When you use phone pay, google pay, etc., there is a there is a user interface for you where you perform the transaction. So mostly 95% of the online platforms like Zomato, Swiggy, what happens whenever you place an order on Zomato, the order gets updated, the payment gets deducted from your account, or then once the order is placed, that you get the message immediately, right? So this is an online transaction that is happening. So everything that is a user interface based becomes OLTP, which is online transaction processing system. Now, so let's understand what's the difference over here. So first criteria is purpose. OLAP helps you to analyze large volumes of data to support decision making, right? So whenever you are making certain decisions, like you have to calculate the profit in a particular quarter, or you have to find out that what is the population count for male and female in a particular state, in a particular country. Let's say you want to make a sales decision. So whenever you analyze your data for taking some decision in future, right, for any decision making task, it becomes OLAP. It is an online analytical processing system. Now, OLTP helps you to manage and process the real time transactions. I already mentioned that thing to you guys, that any transaction that is happening in real time, it is an online transaction processing system, and it is using an online transaction OLTP database which works in real time. See, the databases are the same. Like I mentioned that thing to you, on this data warehouse where all the information is present. If this is being used in real time, it is OLTP. If this is being used for analysis, then it is an OLAP database. Now, this database would have historical data as well, right? Because data warehouses have a property that they are non-volatile and they carry the historical data as well in them. So historical data, by historical data, what I mean, it would have data for like past 100 years as well, right? But the data on which the current transactions are happening, only that part of this data warehouse becomes an OLTP, right? So in short, anything jahan par bhi, wherever something is happening in real time, that is OLTP, right? Now, data source. OLAP uses the historical and aggregated data from multiple sources. That's what I told you just right now. And OLTP uses a real time and transactional data from a single source. So from a data warehouse, if a data is coming on real time basis, if you are getting data, see, a data warehouse is something that is continuously being fed with some data. Every time some data is continuously being fed into a data warehouse. So a recent data, the dynamic data or the real time data, like what we are talking right now, is a real time discussion that we are having. It's not something I'm recording a lecture and then you are going back and studying that lecture. If it would have been that way, it would have become OLAP, because you are analyzing my lecture, you are analyzing my session back at home from a recording, which is a recorded data. It is also a database, right? But right now what we are doing is we are into an real time system, real time scenario. So this is happening in real time, so it is OLTP. Now, OLAP uses multi-dimensional cubes or relational databases. What does this mean? Now, multi-dimensional cubes, when it comes, this is related to the previous point. When you are talking about historical and aggregated data, let's talk about historical data. Aggregated is data that is collected over a period of time. So it's same. Historical data and aggregated data is one and the same thing. I don't know why they have mentioned it as two different words. Now, OLAP uses a multi-dimensional relational database. Now, what is a multi-dimensional database? Relational database, I have already told you, a database that has rows and columns in it. Now, a relational database having multiple relational databases. See, when I'm saying historical data, so every database has a limit to store a certain amount of data. Every data warehouse, because data warehouses are costly, they require money to purchase a space and save some data in them, right? Now, when you have a relational database and adding to that there are other multiple relational databases, right, it becomes an OLAP, or a simple relational database. Only if transactions are happening, it is a OLAP database. Whereas OLTP, it is working on a real time data. So it is a relational database which is a real time data that is feeding, that is getting fed throughout continuously on every minute, every second. The database is getting updated. Now, data model. OLAP uses a star schema, snowflake schema, or other analytical models. Why? Because it's a huge amount of data. If the data is small, it will use a star schema. If the data is huge, it will use a snowflake schema. Now, what do you think? These big giants like PhonePe, Google Pay, Zomato, Swiggy, Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, all these are using a snowflake schema because the data size is too large that in order to reduce the complexity of accessing the data, they are using a snowflake schema. But certain small giants, let's say Daily Objects is a company where you purchase and buy phone accessories, right? iPhone accessories are available on Daily Objects. That's a very new company. It's a very small company, right? So they would be using a star schema. Understand? Now, let's say there's another UPI app that has developed, that has come new in the market. Its user base is less, so it will be using a star schema. Small the database, star schema. Larger the data size, snowflake schema. Simple. Whereas OLTP uses a normalized and denormalized data models. We'll get into normalization later on. Just keep it handy with you. Normalization comes way later. I'll explain you what it is. But as of now, what I can explain you in normalization is that there is, like we discussed yesterday, redundancy. Remember, where there are repeated values, right? The values are the column values are repeating continuously. You have D1 lecture L1 oven, D1 lecture L2 oven. So D1 and oven are repeating continuously. Remember that part. So when there is a redundancy, it is a denormalized model. When you remove the redundancy, it is a normalized data model. That's it. It's the same. It's the same table only, but there's a difference between removing the redundancy, bringing integrity, making data free from any kind of insert, update, and delete errors. We discussed certain insert, delete errors yesterday. So when all those are removed, we get a normalized database, right? Volume of the data. OLAP requires large storage requirements. Think terabytes or petabytes. So the data is rather in TB or PB. It has a large data. Whereas it is a small storage, OLTP requires a small storage like in gigabytes, GB. Again, because OLAP works on a historical data, so the size would be large. Obviously, the size would be large. Now the response time. The database is large, right? So response time would be higher. It would be in seconds and minutes. I know seconds is not something large, is a big term to say, but when we are talking about analysis, so the point of every analysis, every query that we write, every code that we write in SQL, the point is to reduce the execution time. So it's generally in seconds and minutes only, it doesn't go to hours. So OLAP has a longer response time, typically in seconds and minutes. Why? Because it is running on a historical data, it is analyzing the data, it is churning the data, it is like rotating the data here, there, everywhere, putting joins and whatnot to extract an information. But OLTP is a real-time system. You extract the money, you withdraw money from your account, you get a message immediately, right? So that is milliseconds. It doesn't take even a fraction of second to get a message, or you get an OTP on a number. How that is happening? It is OLTP. Whenever you are making a online net banking transaction, or whenever you are logging on to your system, if there is a if there is a multi-factor authentication, you'll get a OTP on your number. How does that OTP come? Immediately. Once you press enter, you'll get an OTP on your number and you start entering the number. That is because the system has your details already stored, because if you have an account, then only you'll get an OTP. Before creating an account, you can't get an OTP, right? So if you have an account, so when once you enter your details into that website or into that system or net banking, right? So it immediately goes back to the database, checks out, okay, Avinset, email ID avinset at gmail.com. So and so, account number correct, phone number correct, email ID correct, PAN number correct. Send him OTP for the final verification. So that is online transaction processing. So it has a shorter response time. Within milliseconds, you get a result. So example of OLAP is analyzing trends, predicting customer behavior, identifying profitability. I have already told you where OLAP is used. OLTP is like processing payments, customer data management, and order processing. We have already discussed this thing. So there are certain more things that I would like to tell you. Okay, as of now, it is clear what is OLAP, what is OLTP. Is the difference clear to you guys? Gopi,
Yes, sir.
Shrikant, Divya. Yeah, okay. Others, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So, now, see, I have told you a very simple thing. It's a same data warehouse on which both the transactions are happening, be it analytical processing or be it a transaction processing. Now, so let's say this is a business warehouse, this is a business process. So they are picking up data from the same source only. Understand? There is the same data. This is the data is circulating here and there between these two things. But when you are talking about a business process, it will include um, the real time thinking, the real time processing. So this would be an OLTP transaction. Post this, the same OLTP data that we have processed. Understand what happens is, like, I made a transaction. I transferred 2 lakh rupees to Divya in her account today itself through RTGS. The money got transferred to her. My account balance got debited. Now, this information, after just a second, it becomes a historical data. Understand? The information that 2 lakh rupees have been transferred to Divya from Avin through internet banking, after the transaction is complete, it becomes a historical data. It goes into business data warehouse, right? Or it goes into the OLAP data warehouse. So that now this becomes a historical information. So every OLTP transaction after it has happened, it becomes a OLAP information. It becomes a data for analysis for the OLAP database. I guess I may not be able to explain you in a proper way. Let's say, um, let's take example of Amazon shopping. So, I'm buying a laptop. I'm buying a MacBook, or let's say I'm buying an iPhone 15 on Amazon. So it is for like 90,000. I enter the details. I enter my email ID, my address, and everything. The moment I do the payment, the amount gets deducted from my account, and it shows order has been processed successfully. You will receive your phone by, let's say, tomorrow or day after tomorrow, whatever it is. Now, that transaction, when it was happening, it was in real time. It was happening there and then at the same moment. It was dynamic. It was happening at that point of time. The moment it is like order is under processing or your order has been received, it becomes a historical information for me right now, or for the database. Not for me, for the database. For me, it's like I'm looking at it, so I'm waiting for my phone every day. I'm looking the website, so for me it's something real time. But for the database, understand that thing, it becomes a historical information. Now, so I have an account in Amazon. I have purchased a lot of products in Amazon, right? So at that point of time, when I'm talking about those product database or that product set, So it will be a part of historical data. So there's an option when you go to your orders, you will check. There's an option check last week's orders, 3 months old order, 6 months old order. There's an option in Amazon web application. You can check your orders. So when it becomes past 1 week, so my order that I placed just now will form the part of that application. So how that would be used? Amazon would use that application, that OLAP information, that database information, which happened through an online transaction processing. It becomes a part of OLAP. It will be using that information to understand my customer behavior trend, my buying behavior at Amazon. That okay, Avan Seth is buying so and so products. He generally buys laptops in the month of December. He buys mobile phones in the month of September. He looks for buying certain household accessories during Diwali season. So they'll start sending me those promotional messages according to my purchase behavior. How that purchase behavior happened? Through OLAP. Through every OLTP transaction that I make, that becomes part of OLAP and it is being used for an analysis. Right? So this is how the circle goes on. The circle keeps on going on. One is real time, another is once real time is done, it becomes historical information. Right? So that's how things go about. Let me put this phone on silent. Yeah. So now it says something like online transaction processing, known as OLTP, supports transaction oriented applications in 3 tier structure, administers day to day transactions. Okay. So, see, examples of online transaction: online banking, airline ticket booking, sending a text message. I send you a WhatsApp. So that also goes into history. You all guys have WhatsApp backup. Hey, you don't want to lose your chats. You don't want to lose chats with your husband, your girlfriend, your wife, right? Or your friends or your family members. So you keep a WhatsApp backup. It's not private. Understand that thing. WhatsApp as a company, Meta as a company, Facebook has bought WhatsApp. So it has the entire data intact at the back end. How can you retrieve your WhatsApp chats? It's somewhere present at the back end. If they want, they can read our chats, they can access our chats. But they have their certain rules through which they are not accessing. But they have the rights to access the data, but they are legally bound not to access our chats. Okay, so everything that is happening in real time is based on some database that is running at the back end. So every real time transaction is a OLTP transaction. Now, you might question me that thing, Avan. We understand that if something is happening in real time, if there's a transaction happening, or if something is happening in real time, that is OLTP. And something that we are using the past old data, that is OLAP. Agreed. Now, do we need to create a OLTP or OLAP database while we are working? No, nothing doing. Database is created the same way for both the terms. For OLAP and OLTP, it is created the same way. Like I mentioned this thing to you. Go off. Over here. So this is the same data warehouse that is being used. The method of creating this would be from this databases, you enter the value into this data warehouse. So it remains the same. Only thing is when you are using this thing. So I remember one of my students asked me this question that, sir, while creating the database, can we mention that it is an OLTP database and it is an OLAP database? No. Database is database. The rules for creating the database remains the same for both. It is how you are using that. If you are using it in real time, it is OLTP for you. If you are using it for analytical processing, it is OLAP database for you. That's it. Nothing else. Now, this is all the same. There are certain more things over here, so you can go ahead and read, but that's what we have discussed. That is the crux of information.